Hey everybody, and welcome. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I'm super happy to be back into the thick of it. Today I'm sitting down with Ricardo from BlockBase. Ricardo, welcome, man. Today we're going to talk. Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about BlockBase, but before we do that, do you want to just tell me a little bit about you and how you got yourself into this mess and kind of where you are now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, the first time I heard about blockchain was about 2014, 15, I think, about Bitcoin. And since then, it's been a roller coaster ride, trying to understand the technology. And then Ethereum came up and all the smart contracts craziness came up. And in the meanwhile, I always thought that blockchain that would store, so this is related to BlockBase already, so a blockchain that would store databases would be a very interesting idea, because it's surprising that we've heard a lot about blockchains to store specific data, like blockchain to store license plates, blockchains to store ID cards, blockchain to store for voting, so blockchains for very specific purposes. But no one proposed, at least I don't know of any solution that proposed to use blockchain to store any type of data, right? So it's been a ride since finding out about Bitcoin and starting to view the first videos of Andreas Antonopoulos that talked very well about Bitcoin, explained it very well. And since then, it's like following the rabbit hole. It's been crazy. And now we're here.
Yeah, let's talk about the product a little bit, and I try to keep this kind of like as, I won't say lowbrow because that's not the right word, but as digestible as possible to new people who are looking. And sometimes like it's easy for you and myself because we're wrapped up in it. We're surrounded by blockchain people. We've got all these buzzwords going. If you were to kind of describe the current problem that you're solving with BlockBase, like what's the product out there that exists now? What is the product that is BlockBase, and how is it superior by using blockchain technology?
Yeah, okay. I think that's easy to answer, in fact. So when you've got a database, there's no way, in fact, to be sure that the data in the database is changed and you know about it. So the data can be changed covertly, I think that's the word, and you can have all the technology around it to try to find out that someone changed the data, but you always have to have people that administer that technology, right? So usually you'll have your database and you'll have a lot of different tiers of technology that tries to protect the data from being changed without people knowing it, like changed legally, changed in a way that people don't find out, right?
Yeah.
We see today a lot of like huge problems with data leaks and data change and data problems, because the current technology doesn't solve it. It just doesn't. And when you've got the data that's as important, the people that are closest to the data may be influenced to change the data. That's one situation. The other one is that your system may be hacked, and then the guys who are protecting the data, they cannot prove that it wasn't them that changed the data. Right? Yeah. So this focuses on one of the main aspects of BlockBase, is to assure the integrity of the data, that the data that you find there is in fact the data that was, so you've got the log of all the changes that were ever made from the beginning to the data. That's the main concept of BlockBase, and it uses blockchain for that. So yeah, that's the main concept. So what does it try to disrupt? So when you have databases that have got important data, you have to set up all this technology around it, all these processes, and train the people to use the technology, and train people to make sure that the technology is protected and so forth. And by using a service that stores the databases on a blockchain, you basically solve a lot of those problems, because you've got integrity and security by default.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of why I was really interested in what you're doing, and it's something that we're seeing a little bit more of in the space. Like that's the basic premise of a blockchain. Like, I mean, I know some people will probably it's probably an oversimplification, and maybe some people get their backup. But like what is a blockchain? It's a trustless record, essentially, right? And that's I just see so many people try to jam these weird use cases into blockchain or try to conform existing businesses to blockchain to put on a spin on it. But I mean, yours is really kind of just taking advantage of the purest form, the purest functionality of the blockchain itself, which is why it's such a beautiful thing. So I think that that's super cool. Ricardo, if you were to take a step back, who would you say kind of your target market is? Like, who are the type of people who are going to be using BlockBase? Are we talking about consumers? Are we talking about businesses? Are we talking about everybody? And ultimately, what's going to be your path to recruiting some of those people to use BlockBase?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. So I think the target, the end goal is to have governments use this type of service. So let's say you've got a government that has a lot of public data from the citizen people, and they usually delegate the storing of this data, the management of this data to private companies. So there you've got a very, very big problem because you have a conflict of interests between the guys who are storing the data and the guys who are trying to influence to change the data. Let's say everything is corruptible from that point of view. So the goal is to have governments to use the BlockBase, but this is far, far away. So in the first approach, I think it makes a lot of sense for dApps to use BlockBase. So you've got a dApp, it's decentralized, and you have to store data somewhere. You can spin up, this is a more technical term, a side chain on BlockBase, and you can store the data for that database on that side chain. So the first target will be dApps. Companies surely can benefit from BlockBase. We've also had some people suggesting that we could also offer BlockBase as a private, private cloud. You've got public cloud and like a private solution that big companies could have that would increase the security of their systems. I personally think that the public BlockBase is the way to go, but we could also offer that. So that's basically the path. So first dApps, then companies, and then governments. And it's a huge path. I'm perfectly aware of that. Yeah, I think that's the roadmap. How do we get there? Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Of course, we all do.
Yeah. So just as a side note, BlockBase isn't just a startup floating in the middle of nowhere. So it's a project that is being built by a consulting company in Portugal called EGAP2, has 400 employees, and belongs to a European group with 5,000 employees. So we've got a lot of muscle that we can resort to, and a lot of business muscle also. So we've got a lot of contact with companies. And I think we can resort to that to try to convince companies that using this type of service makes sense. It's hard because it's a wild change. But for example, the consortium that Ethereum built, and I think was 2017, I think with all those companies, most of them were looking to use Ethereum just from the marketing perspective. We're in blockchain, right? So we're using blockchain. It's trendy to use blockchain.
Yeah,
and I think that's also a very interesting approach that we can explore to get the foot inside the door. I think that's the way you say it.
I don't think that you guys are doing that because your very product itself is inherent in kind of the most basic offerings of what blockchain actually does. So I think that that's really cool. You're not just using it as some hype buzzword, which a lot of companies are doing. They're hopping on the bandwagon, and you're seeing a lot of this like blockchain stuff in marketing. But I almost think that that's the wrong approach too, because I think that a lot of the new products, as we've kind of heard other people echo, I think ultimately you want to be able to use blockchain, but you want to be able to kind of put that behind the scenes and not just be a function. And I think BlockBase is very much along those lines. I also understand you've got some support from the European Union. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I understand you kind of got some funding or something.
Yeah, the support is how do you say it? So we ran for a funding program through something that's called Portugal 2020. That's under the umbrella of Horizon 2020, which is a program from the European Union to fund R&D initiatives in Europe. So it's a program that's hard to get funding because you just can't show up with the crazy idea and you'll get the funding. So you have to write a document, a huge document, in fact, where you explain everything that your product, your idea will do, from the concept to the business model to the go-to-market phase to everything. And then it is evaluated by a panel of experts who will decide if you'll get the funding or not. And the rate of acceptance is really low, like 5%, so about that. And we applied and we won, so that gave us a lot of confidence that we had a good idea going forward. And yeah, but this is not like a partnership with the European Union where they have like a share of the company or the idea or something. No, it's a program that the European Union doesn't have no share on the project. So they just fund this.
Yeah, well, that's impressive in itself, because we see so many, like, blank check companies, as they're called, who just go in and I've got a great idea, and you guys had to do the due diligence to get it down on paper. The very fundamentals of what you're doing make sense in accordance with blockchain. The reasons are there to do it. So I think that's really cool, and the fact that you're building on EOSIO, I love as well. I'm going to ask you kind of a personal question. You're a database guy. Yeah. This is something that fascinates me. I want to talk to you about radical transparency. Do you think that that's something that can benefit the world? Do you think that that's something that we might see? What are your opinions on radical transparency? Is it a pipe dream? Can it happen? And can BlockBase help push it along the way?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I crossed on the radical transparency idea in a video that I saw from Blue Crypto. He was talking about it on an article about Dan Larimer that he wrote about it. Yeah. So the basic concept is you have information that is completely public about the subject matter, right? So everyone can see it, everyone can know exactly from where it came from and until the moment it is at the state it has arrived. And so I think that makes sense in some cases. In other cases, it doesn't make sense, I think. I haven't thought about it as deeply as Dan, for sure. But for example, from a business perspective, there are things that you want to keep secret. You don't want to have radical transparency from that point of view because you lose your edge, right? But there are a lot of things, and I think they're probably mostly related to citizen-related things, government-related things, where you want them to be transparent, because usually what you see in many governments today is that you elect them and then they are like almost your enemy, or they hide information from you, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. In some aspects, in some situations, of course, it makes sense to have some things private, but so radical transparency is for sure a way to go in some cases, and you could have that with BlockBase. So you would just put a database of important information that you want everyone to see, and you wouldn't encrypt it. So in BlockBase, you've got an encryption thing by default, because since you're putting your data on blockchain that's served by people you don't know from around the world, probably in many cases you want to encrypt the data, because you don't want that to go through your data like it was theirs, right?
Yeah.
But in some cases you would just turn the encryption off, and so it will be completely public.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of businesses do have to maintain their competitive advantage. They can't go giving away all their secrets and saying, I use X supplier and, why. It just doesn't make sense fundamentally at the business level, because there is a lot of competitive advantages, particularly in technology. So I'm in agreement with you. However, I do think that governments could definitely benefit from a lot more radical transparency. However, I think that, at least in my opinion, I won't put words in your mouth, I wouldn't say I'm the most trusting person of the current governments that are put in place, and I'm maybe a little bit jaded as to the pace at which that would actually happen, but hopefully it does happen. I love the idea of radical transparency. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I know you guys are kind of like, you guys are having like an airdrop or an air grab rather. So if somebody wants to participate, they're able to go and get some tokens. I'm going to make sure that I put that information below. But before I cue this up, I really wanted to ask you, Ricardo, like if everything goes well in 1 year or even like 2 years, what have you accomplished with BlockBase, and where are you? What does that look like for you?
That's a really hard question again.
It is, yes.
Yeah, so I have a lot of difficulties to answer that question because this is a crazy world. We're just getting started. So we haven't even pushed our code to GitHub. We're almost there. And we haven't launched the software in the testnet. From that to know where we'll be in 2 years, I don't know where I'll be in the next week because this is really crazy. Since we've gone, since people started noticing us and the air grab started, it's so much things that happen every day. So let me think. So where will we be in 2 years? Well, definitely we want to have the technology being used by some companies. So one thing we're thinking about is to have an ambassador program that we can have like people, like one select person from a country, I guess. I haven't thought this through, but I'll talk about it. Why not? Yeah. That promotes the technology for some financial benefit, of course, and blogs about it and talks about it, and just creates a community worldwide, each one in its country, to talk about BlockBase that will stimulate. And I think having partnerships with key players is very, very important, and trying to promote adoption. So adoption of blockchain is a hard thing. It's easier than before. Now everyone has heard about blockchain since 2017, craziness in prices. But from that to using the technology is a big step. So that's why I was talking about even though the technology, the idea is sound from my perspective at least, to convince someone to use it, a company to use it, we'll probably have to go in the first step by a marketing perspective, like saying, hey, if you use this, you'll be cool. Like summing up will be, that's the idea, right?
For sure.
But where will we be in 2 years is really, really hard to say. And I'm afraid to we'll be here. I don't want to say that because I don't know. I really don't know. I know that we'll take.
Yeah. It's a trick question, to be honest with you. Like, of course, I work in the space as well. And I think that you kind of nailed it. Like, you're really realistic with the fact that we are not at critical mass for mass adoption yet. And that may be a little while away. And the best thing that we can do is do exactly what you're doing and take the best ideas that utilize blockchain, as opposed to jam the best ideas into blockchain. And then just slowly kind of knock down the barriers to adoption, right? Ultimately, those are going to be the people who succeed, are the people where the blockchain mechanism is at the very fundamental offering of what you're doing. And I think that we will hit that critical mass. It's so early. Nobody knows what's going to happen next month. I keep telling people I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. You know what I mean? Because just everything is constantly changing and evolving. So it's really cool. Yeah. Ricardo, I'll definitely be chatting with you more in the future. I'm going to make sure that I list the website below. I will list all of the directions to grab the air grab. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think that it's really cool, and it's great to see the government giving you guys the support that you deserve and that you need. And I'll make sure that everybody joins your Telegram and just pays attention to what's going on. Thank you so much for chatting with me. Did you have any last words before we sign off here? Anything else you want to say to the community?
I think you put it very well. I think we could finish with your words. So yeah.
Okay. It's an absolute pleasure, Ricardo. Everybody go and check out BlockBase, and I look forward to talking to you soon, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you.